Welcome to the Raw Coding YouTube channel. My name is Anton, and today I'm going to show you how you can generate a client for your API. We're not going to be following some kind of standard open API, nothing like that. We're not going to be using libraries. This is purely to show you how you can build something for yourself and maybe to understand ASP.NET Core minimal APIs a little bit better. With that said, if you're enjoying the video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, leave them in the comment section, and don't forget to check out the description. I have a C# course that is out. If you would like to know C# as I do it, I highly recommend you take a look at it. With that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm gonna try not to maybe talk too much, have it be maybe a little bit more of an experience. We have a simple API like this. You know what it looks like, right? No bother. You go to the program CS over here inside this generator, you have a reference to the API over here. API doesn't have any dependencies. The first question you're gonna have is, how can I generate a client for this? And if you take a look at code or any other programming language, all you really need to know is for what programming language are you generating a client. This can be C#, JavaScript, Python, any programming language, and you really want to know how are you going to spit out a client. This is all just text. You literally just want a string builder. Okay, so now that you know you're going to create code using a string builder and then spitting it out to a file, you want to know, how do I actually inspect these endpoints in a different application that is going to take a look at my application and spit something out? If you have a program CS like this, you can't really reach these endpoints or take a look at this app. So we really need a cutoff endpoint before we have or finished building our app to where we run it. So let's create a new class. We will call it app. This is going to have a static function, which is going to return a web application, and we're going to create it. We are going to take everything from here to the builder, move it into this function. We're going to need the args, so string array args. In the end, we will return the app. And that's pretty much it. So now we have, let's import this and pass the args. You can say, okay, we build up the app at this point, and then we are capable of running it. If we go to the generator over here, again, remember we do have the reference to the API. We can now say app create, pass some args. I'm not really bothered about the arguments here. This is going to be our app. And now you want to have a think, how are you going to approach this? How are you going to get this information about the endpoints? You can, again, ingest this file or use a Roslyn compiler to essentially parse the syntax tree. I think that's a little bit unnecessary. You want to try to use reflection here to try to extract that information. So the first thing that I generally do is I place a breakpoint and I will just say run the generator. And now we hit the breakpoints. Hopefully this isn't too small. I don't know if I can zoom this in. Zooming in, I think we'll just zoom in my code. Yep. If we take a look at the app, we will find eventually data sources. And on here, we will have our endpoints. For all of the endpoints that we have over here, we will see the get on the root, the person's ID, and then we will also see the post. You may have questions around, well, how do we get the information about which parameters are being passed to an endpoint like persons over here? And sorry, my code became a little bit too small, but yeah, let's say something is going to return a list of persons or something is going to accept a parameter and return a certain type. So for the post, you can have the metadata on the endpoint and it will tell you that it's off method post. You have this runtime information that you have an add to cart response and add to cart as a parameter to that method. You also have another accept metadata, which goes straight to the parameter that is accepted in this function. So you have information around what you are able to ingest and what you're going to be spitting out, as well as where this is going to be happening, what kind of method, etc. So here you have all the information that you need. All you need to do really is get to this data sources. One thing is, if you take a look, let's close this program CS, add the create function, web application, and we will Control F for data sources. The data sources over here, which point to this property, which is internal, so you can't reach it, is really a specific implementation for iEndpoint route builder. So unless the app is not hiding behind this interface, so for example, data sources, you can't reach it. But if you say something like endpoint sources, I can't remember the type already, but I have it on my clipboard. So endpoint route builder. Let's bring this in, endpoint sources. We got data sources. So let's rename this to endpoint route builder. We are now capable of essentially iterating over each endpoint and generating our client. At this point in the video, you are probably capable of switching it off, going back to your application, API, whatnot, if it's minimal API endpoints, and generating a client for it. If you're using MVC, you're gonna have to write a little bit more reflection or see if this information is available. Nevertheless, once you're at a point where you have all the available metadata for your API, well, you just go ahead and start generating stuff. I'm gonna go ahead and add a type. I'll say JavaScript client builder. We can give this a nice little interface, public interface, client builder. You gotta use the I, you know, otherwise they'll put you on the stake. Client builder, place it somewhere over here. At this point, we have to make a decision. Do we want to add stuff like add post, add get for individual methods, or we just want to say add endpoint? I will opt in for just add endpoint, and I'm gonna start really simple with method and path. We're going to go ahead and implement this. At this point, you have a decision to make. You either want to initialize a constructor and put your string builder over here to spit out the final thing, or you may want an intermediate object form where you are mapping this out to some type of data and then you're spitting it out. Ideally, you want the latter. You don't want to just roll with a string builder over here because the latter is a lot more flexible and you can adapt it to different solutions. The former option will be less flexible, but it will be less work. Therefore, I'm going for the less flexible option because otherwise I will have to create data types to store these in, some kind of list, and then another generation object. It's going to be a little bit too much. So as long as you understand that, we're just going to bring in a string builder over here, create the field. And as this gets initialized, again, this is the point about it being less flexible. We're going to append an API that we're creating. So const API will equal to some kind of object. And then finally, when we do spit out, so task output the client to a path, if we implement this, we want to take this string builder, append, close this object off. And maybe it's best to append line here and append line here as well. That can no longer be a character. Say return, file, write all text async to the path, SB, to string. And that is almost all there is. Let's spin up our iClient builder, CB, new JavaScript client builder. At the end, we will just output to api.js. Let's stop the application. I'm gonna open it from a terminal. We're gonna run it. It's gonna output hello world, but it's also gonna give us API.js, okay? So a simple object at this point. We then wanna do something along the lines of get people should be a function. Perhaps if there are some parameters, you pass them along in here, but then you execute a fetch with some kind of parameters. So the path goes here, and this effectively gives us the first template. Let's go ahead and copy this. Go into our JavaScript client builder. I'm gonna make this a little bit smaller again. When we add an endpoint, if we have a method that is get, we can use method equals get, invariant culture ignore case. We'll take SB, append, use the big string, obviously lose my clipboard here. Let's copy this again, place this here, make this templatable as we will want to place a function name here. So method name, and then we also want to template in a path. All right, so let's say path. We kind of have the path, no problem. Perhaps it's going to be parameterized. We will see how we get around that. Method name, maybe a little bit harder. Let's say that method name, we want method. We will trim start or trim start and end from the slashes, and then we will replace whatever slashes we encounter with underscore. So our API essentially gains a snake case convention. There are probably libraries out there that are gonna convert casing automatically for you, but something like this should be okay for me. In the unlikely scenario that, the string is empty or white space, let's do is empty. Let's just do something like home, okay? Or get root. Otherwise, let's output the method name. You can see maybe it's struggling here a little bit with all this templating. I'm gonna give it a little bit of scope here. So there we have it. Now coming back to program CS, we can go to CB. We can add an endpoint, and on the individual endpoints, so from data sources, we can actually select all of these endpoints. So DS data source, we can grab the endpoints, and then for the actual individual endpoint, cool. So there is a display name here. It could be potentially null. I'm not sure what this is actually filled with. So let's comment this out, run the debugger, and we will go to the app, again, data sources, endpoints, go to the slash perhaps, and display name looks like this. So not really something that we can use. However, something that is available as an option to you, let's say that we have this hello world route, we can say with name or with metadata, and then I think it was going to be set to something coherent. So perhaps, if you want to have this kind of logic, try to grab the name from the endpoint if it is assigned, otherwise try to default to something from the route, okay? So coming back to the program, we're gonna have some information, and again, I find it easiest if I have this information in front of me that I'm copying it from. Otherwise, it's a little bit hard to navigate, right? Because if you see all the stuff in front of you, it's a little bit easier to write the code. So my window for code is going to be a little bit smaller, and we're gonna start with the root here, and we're gonna have some kind of metadata here. If we go to the endpoint, metadata, we'll grab of type, HTTP method, and we cannot forget metadata. So this is method metadata, and I'm actually going to select first. I'm gonna expect this to be here. So then when we're calling add endpoint to method metadata, looks like we can have multiple HTTP methods. Again, perhaps you want to add another loop here. I'm just gonna grab first. This is gonna give me the string, and then I actually want the path. So the path should be coming from route pattern, no parameters, and we should just have text. So endpoint, we don't have this information unless it's actually a route endpoint. So when we select many, we can actually take this out now because it is getting a little bit too big. We'll say var endpoints, select many to new line, and then of type, route endpoint. Semicolon on the end. This is going to be endpoints. On the endpoint, we then have our route pattern. So on the endpoint over here, let's grab our route pattern. And for now, we can grab the raw text. With this, let's go ahead and restart. It should spit something out, although in a different folder. Let's get our hidden files. So maybe somewhere in bin obj, API.js. Looks just a little bit bastardized. So we're going to go ahead and fix this up a little bit. The method over here, the trimming, actually should have been on the path. So let's do this. We'll say path and then method plus a little underscore. I know we're doing, string builder stuff, but, this is just an example. You can optimize this as much as you want. So we will have things like get persons. This if statement over here or ternary operation should really be over here. And we're going to grab whatever we had here. We'll have new path, semicolon, take the new path, use it instead of the method name, and then the method name right over here. So it should be get underscore and then whatever the path is, and this should just be root. For the actual place where the fetch is being executed, we noticed that it wasn't wrapped in quotes. So single quotes, double quotes, backticks, we will have formatting in just a little bit. So let's restart this, see the new result that we get. It does look a lot better. We don't have any commas. So the next issue that we are spotting, let's add a comma here and a line. So things should be dropped to a new line and a comma should be added somewhere over here. This get should really be placed to lower. So method to lower. With that, again, let's give it a little restart. Well, let's take a look at it again. And there we go. the bit right here is the next challenge. So if we have some kind of parameters, what do we do? So while taking a look at this function, let's also take a look at the data that we have. So endpoints, we're specifically struggling with this one. We have some kind of route parameters and we have the raw view. If we take a look at the path segments, we have 2 path segments and 1 path segment does look like we could work with it. So let's compare it to something like root, because this is really an outlier. We don't have path segments over here. This is literally just a root. And then we should have maybe 1 path segment over here, and we do. And no parameters either. So for this one, looks like we do have parameters. And if we take a look at maybe parameter policies, get a key ID, maybe a little bit better here. I think it's pretty good. We have quite a bit of information and we know what type it is. So let's do this. We'll come back to the builder. We will need to figure out if we do have any parameters over here. So instead of just passing the path, let's say that we want to pass the whole information. So the route pattern. So whatever this type is, route pattern, let's take this. We'll come back to our builder. We'll replace the path with this, and perhaps we actually just want to do it on the whole endpoint. This path over here, we'll grab it from raw text, the path parameters, let's say any. I'm gonna have my parameters comma separated. For this, I will say something along the lines of this, var params, or let's say function params. If we have any of these parameters, we can use string join by the comma space, path parameters select, where we'll grab the name and then we're just gonna pass it along. Drop this to a new line. Otherwise, if we don't have any parameters, we have nothing to do here. So this can be an empty string. Function parameters, and let's get rid of this semicolon over here. We'll just place them over here, right? They ain't hurt nobody. Fixing our interface over here. Let's remove the raw text. Coming back. Now for the path, where if we have a function parameter over here, we actually just want to pass it down to this path. How would this work? Well, let me find the correct button over here. For the path segments that we have, or actually for the raw text, maybe what we want to do is sanitize this a little bit. Though if we have path segments, this could be a little bit easier to sanitize rather than trying to strip out the type and stuff like that. Here we're just saying remove the curly braces and the colon, and then we can just slap this together yet again and maybe even make this a little bit better. Just prepend $sign at the beginning and just get rid of this colon, all right? And I think that's what we're going to do. So var final path, we're going to go to path segments. And again, we will need to do an anything here. So path segments, we can aggregate this into a final string. So final, next, final plus, and again, I know that this is perhaps not the most performant thing. We don't have the forward slashes over here. And I'm not actually sure how much information there is here. So it's simple. I think we can use that, right? Let's just go ahead and put the next over here. Semicolon on the end, and actually we will need something like this. In the end, I will actually opt in for /root here. So when we're doing this big replacement, I don't actually have to do this if statement over here. So get rid of this, take the final path, place it over here, take all this trimming, place it over here as well, get rid of that. And when we're sanitizing or adding this in, we really want to get rid of the colon. And now we need to work this bit a little bit. Okay, so both of them are simple. The parts over here, we have count 1, and I'm really trying to reach the string over here. So seems like it's quite the path to go all the way there. But it's okay, we are adventurous. So for now, let's go ahead and return this here. We will go to the end, parts, we will grab the first. This will be our part. The part will have content, and actually they will be of different types. This is a route pattern parameter part. This is a route pattern literal part. So what we can actually do is switch this, do this based on type. So route pattern literal part, something like X, and then do something with it. So for this, we'll just do content route pattern. I think it was parameter part. We have X, and this should evaluate to just a string because we actually just have the name. And remember, this ID that's going to be here, we actually want to template it in. So we will need to add a couple of more curly braces over here. So these curly braces here are basically templating in the X, and then the curly braces around it are just the curly braces with the $sign, all right? Because we do have the templating, we will need to change our paths to be interpolated. And I think for now, this should be it. Let's go ahead and restart. Let's go and check this out again. And we have something like this, which is not the path that we have worked so hard towards crafting. We create the part over here, and that's the part that we actually want to template in here. Once we have templated in the part, we will have the final path, and the final path should actually go over here. Let's stop this, restart. We'll go to net 7.0. This 100% doesn't look correct to me, so we managed to mess up this bit where the X is actually not grabbing the name. So again, let's try this. Going to net 7.0, and there we have it. One thing is we do have the $sign and curly braces over here. That is, I would say, a quick and dirty fix for this is to just trim this out or replace this, okay? So we will just slap a couple of more of these on. I will say, I don't want this. I don't want the closing curly brace. We will just get rid of it, okay? All right, and maybe if you have a pattern that looks something like this, you could probably say by. Let's see what this gives us. Taking a look at the API, and there we go. So get persons by ID. You can supply the ID that is going to get templated in. This is actually something that we could give a whirl. So if I place this over here, let's get a directory going, www.root, slap this somewhere in here, go to program CS, let's check this out. We're gonna go to maybe also a cheeky little index HTML where we will load the script. Is it from SRC? API.js. Perfect. That's what I'm talking about. Let's open this up. .watch. The thing is running. Let's go to index.html. We got the page. We got the console. Let's go to our API. And we're going to get persons. What do we get in the network tab? Response. Oh, look, we got a response. Not too far away from actually adding types in the response. And I am doing this on the recording as well. So it is going to be a little bit slower, you know, if I write and I don't talk over this. So it is putting the root here. That is a little bit of an oversight. So let's actually just put this back to slash, and if a string is null or empty, method name, we'll just assign it to get root. All right, so method name equals get root. Not too important, but will do. So back to the debugger while that API is running. Obviously, now that it's running, we can regenerate, replace, and we're gonna get our new functionality. So the file, where am I looking? Wrong API.js. Let's actually get rid of this. Absolutely devastated. Let's, there it is. And look at this bastard thing. Obviously a little bit hard to figure out what you want to write here. Let's say that this is a method postfix. All right, I think, whoa, not in the Finder, man, come on. And then this thing that we're amending is going to be the method postfix, and the method postfix gets used right over here. Again, gonna give this a run without the debugger, get rid of the other terminals. And with this running API.js, there we have it, get root, almost there. I think I'll adjust this to root, and then we're gonna get on with actually making a post method, all right? With the post method, let's go ahead, grab this whole thing, and we're gonna place an else if, and if we see a post, then, well, we want to work with a post. I think that's pretty simple explanation. One of the simplest things you could do. Let's fire up the debugger, the debugger again. Find our way to the post endpoint. So endpoints, add to cart right over here. We have our metadata again. We can see that it's a post, a route pattern. We can see what kind of route it is. And I think it will be useful to see what it spat out just as a default, which doesn't look too bad actually. We want to add something that looks like this and looks a little bit horrible. I know we have a bunch of replaces. We're creating like 10,000 strings. If you want to see super best practices, everything optimized for this client, leave a comment. If it gets significant interaction, whatever, I will make a video. So comment, like, subscribe, and give this a share on Twitter, right? DM me about this as well. Join the Discord server. Maybe I'll do a patron special, who knows? With the dashes replaced with underscores, we now want to start amending this a little bit. The post will look a little bit different. We want to say something along the lines of this. So method is post, and then we're going to be passing some kind of payload. So let's say that this is body. If we have some parameters on the end here, well, we can attach them just the way that we're doing them here. But the body here will have to go through JSON stringify body. We'll grab this, go to our JavaScript builder, place a comma right over here. And the function parameters for us might actually be a little bit easier. If we have none, we don't put anything, but if we do have something, we will need to add a trailing comma. So over here, what I will do is I'll say, give me a trailing comma. So when it gets placed over here, I can say either the body will get templated in, or actually let's say just like that, body, right? So this body will go into here, get stringified, attached to the request. You then have the post, and I think that is pretty much it. In terms of the response, the type that you get, we're not really using it. And maybe that's the beautiful thing about JavaScript, right? You don't need to know all of the types. And let's see what it generates us. Is this usable? I actually think it is. Let's go ahead, slap it in here, replace, come back to the browser, API, post, add to cart. What kind of body do we want? I'll have to find my app.cs, or actually program.cs. What did I say? Stock ID and quantity. Stock ID 1, quantity 2. Post is not valid. Again, that's because I'm being a little bit of an idiot. Let's regenerate this. This time around again. Let's slap this in there like that. Come back, give this a refresh, repost. Unsupported media type will be because we're not specifying a content type. So you will have to say, I want headers. Maybe you want to spread this out on new lines. This is kind of just fetch API territory. I'll have to say application/JSON. Let it bleed off screen. You will survive. Let's regenerate again. Let's take this and place it at www.root. Refresh, call this. And another error, I have probably made a dumb mistake. So, okay, it's headers instead of header. So one letter can kill you. Just let that be your warning. Let's just add an S here and we're good. One thing that's perhaps a little bit unsatisfying with this is that we're not doing anything with regards to type checking or IntelliSense. So let's maybe do a little bit more on that. What can we do? If we come to the API over here where we have this stuff, if I grab API and I say post ID to cart, and I start writing out the body, what should the body be? If instead of this, I write something along the lines of ID, and it should have a from. If I then have a smart ID, it's going to actually help me out. So let's try to extract the property names at least, and then perhaps the types. If you're using something like TypeScript, you're going to have to actually generate types, place them somewhere at the top there, and then utilize them within the individual methods. JavaScript client builder body should be replaced with something along the lines of function parameters, although this should look like this perhaps, where we have a body and then in here some kind of value that should be concatenated to parameter names. So let's try to extract those data sources, endpoints. On this last one we have our metadata. We have accepts metadata, and then on here we have content types, something that we can perhaps pass to the fetch API, and we have the request type. So accepts metadata, let's slap this on to our interface. Perhaps this is the point where you understand, actually add get, add post makes sense because they are going to be accepting different parameters. So accept, okay, after figuring out how to spell this, accepts metadata. There we go. Let's take this parameter. Hopefully the interface is going to be enough. If we come back down to post, maybe, I don't know, somewhere over here, var body params, accepts metadata. We have request type, get properties, select, what do we have, what names, what you wanted to lower them, not a problem, my friend. Even to list, I don't even think we needed to list at this point. We can just go ahead straight into string builder, join, comma, space on the end here. As stuff is bleeding out, put them on new lines, close this off, semicolon on the end, semicolon in the wrong place. Bada bang, bada boom, you got the body params, take them, slap them in over here, restart your application, and hopefully it generates the correct thing. Looks like I'm not actually passing anything here. So metadata, and this is if I have accept metadata here. Accepts metadata first or default. I think sometimes this is not present. So let's take this. We're going to go to the next error. Place this over here. This is sometimes null, so we can mark this as sometimes null. And let's actually make sure that our implementation abides by this. We'll then again try to rerun the debugger here. Not crucially important that I'm going to run the debugger, but you know, I've been doing it all this time, so might as well. Cool, so we have stock ID and quantity. Perhaps again, I want to do something about the situation where I'm gonna just to lower the first thing, not the whole thing, all right? But now at least I should get something that should be placed over here. And speaking of which, these two should look approximately the same. And again, if you're doing TypeScript, hopefully you can see by looking at something like this, it should be relatively easy to translate your type from C# to TypeScript, okay? Otherwise, you're gonna take this segment over here. Let's say we'll just transfer this to new lines so it's actually readable. I'm gonna slap this over here. This coding session is getting a little bit violent. You know, we're slapping, putting things in places. Let's do this one not through the terminal for a change, right? So run the generator. Let's see if we get the correct thing. Looks like we do, although the to lowering, you know, I think this breaks the convention. Again, I wouldn't write the casing conversion myself here. I would actually look for something that does it for me. So perhaps the to lower that I'm doing over here isn't necessary. So again, let's rerun that. Take this API, not even gonna check it, slap it in there. Bada bang, bada bang, bada boom. Didn't happen. Let's delete it. I'm not sure why it was angry there. Let's come back, refresh. I don't think the browser is going to have the same IntelliSense properties. So post add to cart, invoke this method object. Yeah, stock ID, let's say 1, and what was the quantity? It's now all going to be big letters. Make sure that it actually posts that. We get a good response that we can use, and the payload looks good as well. And I think I will stop it here. Really enjoyed making this video, something pretty powerful that you can make and also relatively simple if you're building some kind of service and you want other people to interface with your service and you know, you're like, oh man, I gotta go code up a Python library, I gotta go code up a JavaScript, TypeScript, I gotta make all of these libraries. No, you do not need to do all of that bullshit. You just create a generator, different languages, and then all you do is you run your generator. Don't support some kind of feature, just add that one feature, make sure it's working for all the languages, and then you just spit it out. It's just a string builder at the end of the day. And that's all there is to it. Don't forget, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comments section. If you would like the source code for this video as well as my other videos, come support me on Patreon. If you enjoy the work that I do, you should be supporting me anyway. What are you doing? A very big and special thank you goes out to all of my current Patreon supporters. You help me a lot making these videos. As always, thank you for watching. Have a good day.